Hello, hello. Welcome. Welcome to a new day of 4coder stuff. Hey Jim, welcome to the chat. So, before I get straight into working on stuff, I'm gonna do a quick update. I'm sure that people who watch on YouTube like the updates at the beginning of the video. So here's the update of things that are happening in 4coder right now. Yesterday, I had an offline session, and now 4coder can do this. Well, I mean, this is not impressive. It's always been able to do this, but that highlight is no longer programmed the same way. That is a pair of markers that have been tagged with the highlight range visibility setting, so that when the buffer gets rendered, it's rendering a highlight right there. This means you can now put highlights wherever you want, and they can last for however long you want them. You can add them and remove them. You can give them any color you want. They don't have to match the color palette. I've made this one match the color palette. But to demonstrate that this is actually the case, I am now going to build locally a change I've just made that hopefully will apply if I've done this correctly. That should have just applied a change to the highlighting rule. Okay, what's going on? Oh, I have a space. No, wait, what's this? Okay, something weird is going on because it didn't apply the new rule I expected it to apply. Let me track something down real quick. I did a git pull. That's not selection, that's just the iterative search thing. But we can implement selection now correctly. But before we talk about that, I want to track down something. Let me make sure I actually successfully updated it here. So visual, yeah, set visuals. So that's here. Let me go to search, iSearch. Now where is iSearch? Ah, okay, I must have not had, okay, 1 second. I thought I left this in so that I could do this demo, but apparently I took it out at some point. Anyway, here's the demo I meant to give you. After rebuilding, now when I try to use the incremental search, the highlight looks like this. You can see it's all weird now. It can be however you want it to be. I've just programmed it to use two separate ranges that cover the first and last third of the thing that you actually matched. We could also do things like let's see, change the color. So instead of using the highlight color, I could use the default text color. Whoops, didn't rebuild or something? What went wrong? Ah. Now, it's not using the palette highlight color, it's using the default text color for that highlight. It can be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't even have to be one in the palette. It could just be, you know, random. So let's try that. Let's try the debug pink. Debug pink FF00FF. And so on. Yes, debug magenta would be more accurate, that's true. Okay. And then, the other cool thing about what we've got now is when you get build errors, if you want, I'm not done building the customization for this right now. It's just built in to always do this. But suppose I go to a different code base. I don't know. Let's go to this one. Load the project. Build it. We got compilation errors because I've left a compilation error in here on purpose for testing this. Doop. It now puts a little red mark on all the compilation errors. You see that? And just to be clear, those mark things there, you know, if I build again, they disappear, and then it parses and they show up. So as soon as it parses, that's when those marks show up. And they follow the text, right? So you can move things around and they stay where they are put. So this gives you a couple of neat tricks. One is if you do this with a jump list, you can do I don't know, find me all of the for loops, and then I hit a breakpoint. I don't remember having a breakpoint, but there we go. And now your for loops all have that weird red thing on them, and so here I can, you know, see I'm matching a for that's not correct. The weird part about it is I have red marks from all of my different jump lists. So I have one from compilation errors, and I'm skipping those, and so now I can see, oh, I have a way to jump to there. I just need a different jump list. Where is the jump list that would get me there? And I can go look for it. I'm not sure exactly how I want that to work. It might be that I want to not show it for all jump lists. It might be that I do want to show it for all jump lists. It might be I only want it for compilation errors. It might be that, I don't know, all kinds of things. But, yeah, something like this will be pretty neat to have in there, I think. Like visually marking where your markers are, even if it's just for debug purposes for me, so I can figure out why jumps are getting messed up sometimes, you know? So that's pretty cool. Another feature is, oh, this isn't really a new feature, but another thing about this is, as I was working on how to control this, one thing that I realized is, well, let me demonstrate this way. So here we have the same file side by side, and all of the same markers are on this file in both cases. But if we're going to someday have the cursor and mark be literally replaced by the system, so that the core doesn't control cursor and mark at all, then we don't want the cursor from this buffer to also show up over here. We want them to be separate. So sometimes which view you're rendering in doesn't matter, and you just always show a certain marker. But sometimes the view you're rendering in does matter, and only certain markers should be applied. So the idea is, when you set a visible marker, you can say, here's the view I want to key this marker on. So here is, you know, this, again, remember this debug magenta is proof that we're using a visible marker, and that it's only visible in this view because for the incremental search, the ranges are keyed to the view that is doing the search. But for the sticky jumps, they're not keyed to any view, so they show up in any view that is viewing the buffer. So that's what we have so far. I also want to have the ability to mark a whole line so that you can say, like, for instance, I want this whole line to be highlighted. Emacs had this feature, and a few people have asked me to put it back in for Handmade Hero, including Casey, and a few other people want it just for themselves too. So we want to get highlighting a line in there while we're here visiting all of this related stuff about how we render and how we highlight and where we get colors from and all that. We're going to try to get line highlighting in first. And then I have a few other ideas. I want to be able to make it possible to default set. I want to add a line highlight on where the cursor is, and I want to make that a thing that you can that's programmed from the custom layer, because that will be a good test case of how much power do I actually have. I will probably often want to be able to say, hey, I'm putting my view into a mode where I want it to always lightly highlight the token that my cursor is on. So like if my cursor is right here, maybe it does a light gray highlight on this entire token right here. That way I can see if I did Alt backspace, that was what would get deleted. That might be a nice feature to test out too. So we want to do some kind of non-obtrusive highlighting on a token, whole line highlighting wherever the cursor is, and we want to make both of those programmed from the custom layer to see if we have the ability to put things in where they need to go and to express the things we need to express, right? Once we have that, I'll be open to suggestions for other things we could do today using all this new power, like how I should structure the visible markers for the sticky jumps and stuff. And any other cool ideas people have, like maybe a selection-based editing paradigm, like the basis of one of those or something. I don't know. All kinds of possibilities. Highlighting, you know, right now I'm putting a little, like a marker on the F, but I could highlight the entire 4 while we're stepping through it. But do we want to leave the highlight up? When do I take those highlights down? These are things we'll work on today. So, yes, close anyway. Lex Martin asks, is it possible to keep a visible highlight in a non-active view? I don't know what you mean by that. In a non-active view. If you mean like a view that is open but not the currently active one, like if you have two side by side and the one on the right is active and the one on the left is open but not active, then yeah. You can keep, you can have like, it doesn't have to be the active one. You can key it to any view that is open as long as it's open. Yeah, so another thing we could do is highlight, in the incremental search, highlight all the matches in a buffer. That's a little bit, you know, that's a bigger, so first of all, to go back and answer Lex Martin's question, yeah, that's totally possible. When you say, here's a marker, and you key it to a view, you're keying it to a view ID, so it's irrelevant whether that view is active or not. It just so happens to be that the incremental search is creating a highlight that only exists for as long as the search is active, and it only is active as long as the view is active, and it is keyed to the view that is active when it starts, so it looks like it's in the active view the whole time. But it doesn't have to be. It could be keyed to a view that you never make active. It doesn't have to be active when you keyed it or anything. Yeah, it is possible to do what you're talking about, Jim. I'm not sure I want to do that yet. The incremental search thing is a like, you know, it's set up in such a way that it doesn't do a full parse, and I'd like to keep it that way for now. What I could do is have it parse ahead to find the next match and highlight that, and the previous match and highlight that with like markers or something, like a preview of where you would go if you jumped ahead one more. But I wouldn't even see it being particularly valuable to do the whole file or the whole buffer, because you can't scroll around while you're doing that anyway, can you? Maybe you can. I don't think you can. Let's give it a try. I mean, doing the full parse isn't that big of a deal. If it would really be valuable, I could easily be talked into it. It's just, okay, I guess I can scroll, and it somehow screws around with my highlight when I do. Like, I don't know what's going on right here. I think what's happened is, right, I know what's happened. So because I'm no longer turning the cursor off when I begin using the highlight, this actually works, which it didn't used to do. But what we actually want to do is make sure that the view stays locked onto this by jumping the cursor to it all the time. Also, I'm not clear on how in the middle of a coroutine I'm even getting the ability to scroll around. So this is actually a bug that I've introduced that we need to work on. Yeah, Mikkel has the right idea. We'll just jump whenever we increment or like forward and backward. Okay. I'm talked into it. Since we have a way to make scrolling work apparently, which didn't used to be the case. Maybe we'll look at this later. Alright. Before we do anything, let me update our to-do list. So this is all working. Alright, so we want to have a customizable line highlight or highlight line at cursor all the time. Customizable highlight token at cursor all the time. And then we want iSearch upgrade with full parse and all that. And then we want potentially figure out what to do with sticky jumps. That would be helpful. Yeah, okay. Another thing we could do is actually do our brace matching using this feature. This would actually make that easier to do from the custom layer than trying to do it in the core somehow with the text color. Alright, we have a rich, full to-do list. Let's get to it. So line highlight. That is an interesting problem. And I didn't do it yesterday because it doesn't really fit into the pattern that everything else I did yesterday fit into. Yeah, here it is. So the whole system is a little bit complicated to explain how we get to it, but eventually we get this array of render markers, and a render marker tells us what type it is, like is it a block? Is it a wireframe, like a rectangle outline? Is it a range? Is it a line? Or is it an I-bar? I didn't show you this, but we can now do I-bars. So if you're not into the thing where your cursor is a rectangle, your cursor can just be a line pretty soon. We'll get to the whole Notepad style stuff, Sublime style stuff, in not too long now. An additional go-to definition button. I don't know what you mean by that, Flying Solomon. If I press escape or enter out of the search result, I'll go to either the start of the current selected, start or the current selected. Would changing a result while scrolling be possible so the enter trigger... I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about if you hit escape or enter, it's different? I'll have to look at what you're talking about. Line as in line highlight. I mean, I've also considered using this system of markers to let you do underlines and strike-throughs, but that's going to be for later because I don't have it quite set up to do that in the text renderer yet, but it would actually be pretty easy. If you did that, what you would do is you wouldn't associate a color at all. You would just say what type it is and the position or the range, and it would be ranges again. So it would use the range system, and it would say I'm a strikeout or I'm an underline. And then we would have a bool here that says, are we currently in one of those? And then down here, when we render the glyph, we would be able to add that extra style information. So italics, bold, all that could be, italics, bold, underline, and strike through could all be supported by the system eventually. I'm just not going that far with it yet. Yes, Flying Solomon, I like that. I will do that at some point. Let me add that to my to-do list. Okay, so let's look at line highlight. The reason line highlight is harder is because, so let me explain what we've got. We've got an array of these things, and they've been sorted by their positions. So we have them all by position, and we have them in the range of what's visible. So it doesn't give me the whole buffer. It gives me from the start of the first line that's being rendered to one past the end of the last line that's being rendered. It gives me all of the render markers in that range. And so as I'm rendering each of those characters, I can check the character index that I'm on against the position value of the markers in the array, and then I consume all of the ones. Basically right here it says while my scan index is less than the number of markers, and while the scan index dot position is less than or equal to the index of the glyph that or the character I'm trying to render, I consume that render marker and I apply whatever effect it has. So if the render marker is a character block, then I just set the marker highlight color to that. If it's a highlight range, then I check its ID and see if we've begun or ended a range and set the range color. If it's a line highlight, I don't know what to do yet, but moving on. If it's a character wireframe, I set the wireframe color, and if it's an I-bar, I set the I-bar color. Nothing else is supposed to be able to get into this, so we have an assert on the default. Now, the problem is, it is not actually correct to do this on a character-by-character basis for lines, right? If an entire line needs to be highlighted, then what happens is, first of all, that the rule I want is if the marker is anywhere on the line. If I have a marker sitting right here that is a line highlight, I want that whole line highlighted. But I won't discover that until I reach the H of that line, if I do it this way. Which means what would actually happen is, at best, I could have this H forward being highlighted, because all of these are currently set up in such a way that they would have to scan ahead and discover that, which is not the way this thing works. I don't want to have to scan ahead indefinitely, find the first line highlight, and then go, oh, here's a line highlight, let me know when we're getting close, and like figure out if we're on the same line as it yet, and then once we're on the same line as it, apply it, and then scan ahead to the next line highlight, and then keep scanning ahead until we find one on the next, that's not on a different line. So I need to get a little creative here. Some possibilities for how to improve this. One could be that when I sort these by their position, if the type I'm looking at is a line highlight, I want to sort it into a completely separate segment. So I could sort it into two segments: the line highlight stuff and the character highlight stuff, and then subsort the character highlight stuff in by position and the line highlight stuff by position. That way I can, say that line highlights don't show up in this loop, and I can treat it differently. That could be useful, maybe, because then if I'm scanning ahead for the next line highlight, it's always the next one in the segment of line highlight stuff. Other question then is, suppose I do that, when I see what the next line highlight is, how do I determine if it's ahead of me but it's on the same line as me? I still need a way to determine that. So what I probably want to do is, once I've got the segment of line highlights, I want to run through them all and convert their indices into line numbers. That would make it exceedingly easy to get it right once we're inside the render loop. That shouldn't be too expensive, because, I mean, unless the customization code has loaded us up with like hundreds of line highlights that are all fitting within the same vertical span somehow, there should maybe at max be like, if every single line is highlighted, what is that, like 40 of these that you actually need to accomplish that? So if you're not overdoing it with the line highlights, that should be fairly cheap to just convert them all to line numbers. We could even convert them to line numbers by doing an iteration without even having to do full cursor coordinate conversions for each of them, because we can just look at the array of where each line starts. Yeah, and then when we're doing the iteration over it, we'll be okay. Yeah, I have the plan. Step 1. Before sorting by position, create sort into two segments, character based and line based. Step 2. Sort both segments by position. Step 3. Delete the line highlights element of the switch in the loop over character based. Let it go to default. 4. Replace the pose value with a line number value in every line-based render marker. Step 5. Create a separate scan index for the line segment and track the line color. Okay, that's the algorithm that I am going to use to modify the code. So now let's run that algorithm in my brain. Okay. Sorting by position, sort into two segments, right. Okay, so where do I sort? Quicksort, there it is. So this is the marker's quicksort that sorts by position. for that, I'm going to want visual markers segment sort. Markers.markers, 0, markers.count, and then I'm going to want an array of ranges called the segment visual markers segments. We're going to get 2 of them, and that'll get output right there. Then we are going to sort segments.min first one pass last 0. I would be better. I, and then I don't have my snippets in this version yet. I need to upgrade so I have snippets. Call this marker segments to make it smaller. There we go. So we're going to do a segment sort, and then we're going to sort each of those segments separately. And I feel like out the other end what we're going to want is render marker array character markers. Character markers.markers equals, not makers, markers equals markers.markers plus marker segments 0.first. Character markers.count equals marker segments 0.1 pass last minus 0.first. There's our character markers. And then we're going to want line markers there we go. Okay, so that's good, but now all of the code down here that's using the markers and stuff needs to be switched to using character markers. And there we go. Now that part is done. I need to go and actually write the segmentation though. Segment sort. Let me get caught up real quick. Would the selected search result be the one of screen or the one where you started scrolling? I'm saying... Okay, so the way it would work, I mean, there's a lot of options, but the easy way to make it work is not, it would be pretty difficult to make it, I mean, I could make it so that if you press enter, you just stay wherever you are and your cursor jumps to the where you scrolled to. And then incrementing through the iSearch is one way to force the scroll to move around, and if you have the search result in view, the cursor will jump to it. But if the search result is not in view, the cursor will just jump to the view over the shortest distance it can. Alright, so, do, 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 do. Let's implement segment sort. Render markers. First. One past last. Range, range is out. Okay. So, this is a really weird type of sort because there's basically two values. There's like zeros and ones, and we're just trying to sort them. So if you have an array of zeros and ones, what's the correct way to sort that quickly? There must be some obvious way to do it. You keep track. You start from the left-hand side and scan forward until you find the smallest, the one in the farthest left position. You start from the right and you scan backwards until you find the zero in the highest position, and you swap them. And then you scan both until you find that again, and until you get to a point where the highest zero is below the lowest one, you just keep swapping. It'll take O of one time, or O of n time. Right? Yeah, that should work. Okay. So, this sort only works for a two-segment sort. If we end up wanting more segments, scrap it and try again. So we're going to have the, let's see, we're going to call it the, I'm going to call them I0 equals first, and I1 equals 1 past last minus 1. Then what we're going to do is say, for as long as I1 is less than 1 past last, and markers I1 dot type does not equal line highlights, I1 plus equals 1. So we scan I1 forward until we find the first line highlights. We're going to scan I0 backwards for as long as it is on a line highlight. And now we have the lowest line highlight and the highest non-line highlight. We swap those. If I1 is less than I0, we swap those, right? Else we break. And then we just do that. We just do that. There we go. So, are we guaranteed that this always eventually breaks? I1 is always increasing, I0 is always decreasing. Anytime that we do a swap, it will move at least one forward and one backward. So every step of this loop, if we start with a variable, which is the distance between these two, that number should decrease by 1 after every swap, which means the total number of swaps can't be more than n over 2, where n is the length of the array. Which means that we have a finite number of swaps always before suddenly I0 is less than I1. And then we break and we're done. Except that we need to figure out the ranges. So the ranges would be okay, cool. So there's our segment sort. Done. Then we sort both segments by position. That part is done. Okay, line highlights can go away. Done. Right, now what we need to do is the position to line conversion in this line marker segment. Alright, in order to do this, we're going to need some metadata, which I need to figure out if we have. We have the file, so we should have the metadata around here somewhere that tells us where the character positions are, where the byte positions are for the start of each line. I need to go to file.h and find that, somewhere in the state. Line indents, wrap positions. I have character starts. Line indents, wrap line index, wrap positions. Is that really the set of metadata that we keep? We don't keep byte starts? Is it in the buffer itself? There it is. It's in the buffer. It's that low level. Okay, that's stupid. Right? I'm not crazy, am I? That's stupid. Yeah. This engine's a little bit wonky. A little bit goofy. Okay, so anyway, we can make that work. File buffer, or file state buffer, line starts, file state buffer, line count, and that should be enough information. But I think we can do one better, because we also know we have the full cursor at where we start. So we know the line index at where we start. So that's enough information, and then I guess this is like a hint. Start from And then there's the line right there. I'll take that line -1 to actually make it easier, and then let's write this thing. Render marker array markers line starts line count hint line index. Okay. Okay, so now we're expecting that line starts square brace hint line index gives us the smallest possible value for any of the line positions we're about to see. I want to give this an alternate name. There we go. And then what we want to do is so that's currently sorted by position. I want to assert that 0 is less than or equal to hint line index, and hint line index is less than line count. Then I want to assert that line starts hint line index is less than or equal to markers.markers0. Right, this can all happen if markers that count is even greater than 0, first of all. Dot position. If that's the case, then we're in good shape because we can start from hint line index and keep going. Then what I want is pretty much a line scan index equals hint line index, marker scan index equals 0. For line scan index, well, let's just, I'm not quite sure what we want to do yet. It's going like this. Look ahead line index equals line scan index plus 1 if, oh, I also am going to need that, aren't I? No, I won't actually. If look ahead line index is less than line count, then line starts look ahead line index gives me the first of next line, first byte index of next line, and then what I do is for as long as marker scan index is less than markers count, marker scan index plus equals 1, markers marker scan index dot line index equals line scan index. Okay. And why don't I throw this in parens real quick? Markers marker scan index dot position is less than first byte index of next line. So as long as we still have a marker in this segment to look at, and its position is less than the next line, and so as long as the next one for us to process has a position less than the first thing of the next line, what we do is we set its line index equal to the scan index we're on, and then we increment our marker scan index. But this is only going to work if this is the case. So what we actually have to do here is first byte index of next line equals 0. Boom. Bring this out here. If that is not possible, then first byte index of next line needs to equal the max I32. If we are at a point where we're on the last scan index, we don't care what there is no next line, there is no first byte index of next line, so all the remaining marker scans should just get swallowed up into that then, right, into that last line. And that will have that effect. Then we do this loop here and fill those out. Once that's done, what we're going to do is say if marker scan index is equal to markers count, then we can break. Break out of what? Well, all the way through all of this, what we're going to be doing is looping like that. And actually what we could do, well, yeah, this is fine. So the line scan index, it looks like that. And we can assert right here that the line scan index is always less than the line count, because if it ever becomes equal to the line count, that means we didn't finish in the previous step when this was the case, that we looked at the next one, it was too big, and we tried to swallow them all up. If we try to swallow them all up and we still don't swallow them all up, then we should hit an assert. Alright. Let's see. How does this build? Hold on a sec, I gotta check something out. Someone just asked me something on the Discord about something they asked me on Twitter, which I don't know if I saw. I see. I don't think Canuckles is around anymore, but he has a suggestion for a possible feature. Actually, like a bookmarking type system is something that's been on my mind. It's just, I could have done bookmarks without the highlighting, and that's not an excuse for why I shouldn't do it right now anyway, but I'm going to use it as one, so deal with it, because I'm in charge. It's my stream. I'll do it eventually, it's just, I don't feel like it. That's kind of a big system I don't want to do right now. Okay, so everything built, if I remember correctly. Why does this say Scratch? Bring up compilation. Yeah, everything built. So back to Scratch. Okay, so finally, we're going to come down here. Here's all our line markers. Let's do line markers scan index equals 0. And we'll do line markers color equals 0. Okay. Now what we do is visual marker colors. We're going to do line marker colors right here. And what we have to do is go marker line highlight equals 0 for visual markers line, wait, what did I call it? Line scan index? What is it? Scan line markers, okay, that's lame. Line markers, visual line markers, visual line markers, scan index, scan index is less than line markers dot count, and oh, I have a problem. Yes, I have a serious problem here. So what we want to do is hoist this up out here, and then what we need to do is if is new line blah 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 blah, then do this work. And the new work is that, and then line markers dot line index is less than or equal to line index. Then we will do some work, and finally visual line markers scan index can increment. And by the way, that needs to be used to index into the array. Okay, perfect. So, assuming we can figure out the line index later, and assuming we can figure out if this is a new line, first what we have to do is say assert, oh, we need to grab the marker out of the line markers array using the line markers scan index, the visual line markers scan index, and make sure that the marker type is indeed exactly equal to buffer markers type line highlights. If that happens, then we can say marker line highlight equals marker color. Done. Alright, and then to make that useful, what will happen is down here, color highlight. So yeah, after everything else, if marker line highlight does not equal 0, if the color highlight does equal 0, then set the color highlight equal to the marker line highlight. You can see I have this sort of like priority thing here where like the marker highlight does not equal 0, then the marker highlight will trump the marker line highlight. And what about the highlight this color? Well, that's a different thing. Don't worry about it. You just start running out of names when you're doing this kind of shit. But that gets trumped, you know, by the highlight, but it trumps the line highlight and so on, right? And the cursor stuff trumps the marker highlight stuff, and it all just comes into its priority with line highlight at the very back. Actually, that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea. I take it back, because that won't highlight across the whole line. It'll stop as soon as we hit the new line character. Yeah, that's annoying. I've got it. Okay, so a couple of changes. Is new line, you're gone. Is new line, I said is new line, you're gone. Okay, there we go. Is new line, you're gone. Line index, you're gone. Line index, you're gone. Alright, this was a little bit off, but mostly correct. It's less than or equal to int. So what we're going to do is, we're not going to ever store a line index in there. What we're going to do is replace position with first byte of line. Instead of storing the line scan index in there, we're actually going to store the first byte index of this line. So here we're getting the first byte index of the next line. We're also going to store first byte index of this line indexed line scan index. Okay, and the reason that's useful is now I can tell whenever I'm getting to the next line, because I get to the next line when I see the first index that's above that first byte of the line, right? So now I don't need to separately track which line number I'm on. I track which line number I'm on implicitly by looking at the index of the character I'm on and by encoding the point at which the new line starts right here, like that. So I can now come up here and say marker line highlight is not a state that has to carry over between iterations. It can be more localized than that. And then, if we get to here and the marker line highlight does not equal 0, we're going to make a line rect by going like that, and then we're going to draw the entire line rect in one go. Line rect, marker line highlight. Yes. And then we just need to decide on what this rectangle needs to look like. And the answer is that the x value for x0 and x1 need to be blown out to the sides of the panel, and the y0 and y1 need to stay the same as the original chart rect. So let's find that panel information. I know you have it around here somewhere. Port X rect. Rect. There it is. There it is. So rect x0, rect x1. Now, there's only one problem left, which is what happens with a wrapped line. We haven't stopped to think about that yet, because why would you stop to think about something that you don't have an answer to yet? Well, to figure out the answer. But why would you do that if you haven't even solved the easy version of the problem yet? Is what I meant to say. Obviously. Because, of course, you have to stop to think about things you haven't figured out yet. Okay, cool. Didn't mean to do that. Send me more info about the crash, young Lena. I'd like to know. It sounds like it's maybe an input thing or something, but send me info. I'd like to have that on my. I'd like to have that in my email box so I can keep track of the the outstanding bugs I have. Okay. So it's built. I guess there's only one thing to do, which is we're going to go try it. I'm going to try it by going into the jump sticky, look for the wire frames, and replace that with temporarily a line highlights. Alright, let's give it a shot. Line highlights! Look at that! So now I can highlight the whole line that has the error on it, and it's like, oh, what's the error? Missing semicolon before win main. No, still got it. Still got the problem. Wait, what's actually the problem? Call convention. I think that whole thing is just made up. Boop. That's pretty cool, actually. At least for errors, I quite like that. I don't know. What do you guys think? I want a poll. Someone run a poll for me. It doesn't have to be official. Let me just here. I'm gonna put in this. Vote like, dislike. Everyone, just type into the chat if you like or dislike that for compilation errors. Alright, I think it's kind of overwhelming that compilation errors should have this as a fixed feature forever. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Everyone likes it. Okay, cool. Then let's make that permanent. Let's make that a thing. I don't think I necessarily want that for all jumps. Let me play around with it for a little bit. Obviously I could change the color to make it look less like a problem. Like red makes it look like a problem. I could make it use a different pop color so that it doesn't look like a problem on sticky jumps, maybe. But what do you think about for this? This looks like a little bit much to me, having it highlight on like searches like this. Like look at this. I don't think I like that. Okay, so let's play around with this for a bit because we have a lot of options. So first of all, I want to be able to distinguish between compilation errors and other jumps. So how can we do that? So what we're going to do is say, up here at the top, we're going to ask, is compilation buffer equals false? If match, make string compilation. Let me just search for the word compilation real quick, actually, because I probably have other places where I do this. Yep, that's exactly how I do it. Okay. There we go. So, if it is the compilation buffer, then what we're going to do is take these up here, and we're going to say we're trying to figure out two things. We're trying to figure out the marker type, and we're trying to figure out the marker color. Yeah, the error line, the color of the lines is just coming from the color palette. But if you're curious, you can use alpha. I never do, but you can. So we could be like, our marker color can be, let's do like half, and then bit shift that into the 24, like into the top 8 bits, and then combine that with color.color and mask that to that, and then if is compilation buffer, change the marker type like so. Alright, so that's just a demo so that I can quickly show you that you can use alpha on these colors, which I haven't actually tested, so it's worth testing. Yeah, alpha works on all of the color stuff. If I've, if I haven't like introduced a regression. I never test it, so it might have regressed for all I know, but it's supposed to work. See? There you go. Alpha. So now these things have single point marks, and the compilation errors look like that. Let's keep playing with it though. More we can do. Alright, let's see, what else can we do? I'm gonna switch this back to this though, and then we're gonna say this is actually, whoops, it's actually gonna look like this. This is actually gonna go like that. This here is gonna go like this. So that's going to be pop 2. Pop 2 is always the, like, the thing that you use for this color here, whereas pop 1 is the thing you use for this color here. And in pretty much every color scheme, I make these to be the, like, aggressive pops, and these to be the sort of attention-grabbing but non-aggressive pop colors, right? So I think it'd be more appropriate when it's not a compilation buffer to use pop 1, and maybe instead of putting that there, we'll just do this. So we have basically marker color and marker type both getting set. And marker type will be, it doesn't have to be character wireframes. Let me show you some of the other options. You guys can give me a review. So there's character ibars, which would look like this. Load the project. Compilation errors look like that. Aggressive pops. And search results look like this. I don't even know if you can see anything. It's very faint. It's like that line right there, right? Not very powerful. On this color scheme, by the way, we're using dark bluish as the second pop. So it's a little bit. That doesn't read super well, I don't think. Junk highlight would actually be pretty good for errors. You're right. Maybe I should do that. So maybe the pop colors are really for the UI, like up here on this bar and in lists. So maybe instead of using pop colors, I should use junk highlight junk, and I don't know, like highlight. And then instead of an I-bar, let's try just a character block. Okay, let's do it again. So here's compilation errors. Using junk highlight, it gives it a little lighter color. That's not alpha this time, that's just the junk highlight being a different color. And if I do search, now we're using character blocks on the standard highlight color, so it looks like that. So, Captain Craft asks, can we underline text? Not yet. It's coming sometime soon. This system will also be able to support text. Since it can do ranges, you weren't here for this part of the demo, but it can do ranges. So like this right here has always been a feature in 4coder that it highlights like this, but now you can see that that is like separate from the cursor, which also still exists because this is a programmable marker range now, and so I can put ranges into the text to do things. And so in addition to coloring with a highlight, I'm going to make it eventually so that you can put a range in that says use this style on the text. I just don't have the text rendering up to snuff for that to be possible yet, but that'll be there soon. Flying Solomon says, I liked the highlight for the whole match for the search more. Yeah, so we could do that. A part of the problem is I'm adding visuals onto the markers that are already a part of the jump system. So if I change this to be ranges, I also have to change the jump system to know that it's using ranges and not like single points. But I can do that. It's totally possible. Oh, you want like to highlight a line with an outline, like a wireframe line highlight? Maybe, yeah. So what I need to do before I can do that is ask how wrapped lines will work. So let's change our focus a little bit here. This has been fun, but you need to go away, and you need to go away. Boom. And now what we want to do is let's track down a wrapped line. Here's one right here. Let's put a line highlight on this by doing that. Okay, so right now it only highlights the first part of the wrap, and the second part down doesn't get highlighted. So here's our next question for the audience. What is the best behavior that I should do? Should everything in the wrap line get the same highlight? Like if I highlight a part of the top of the wrap, should this get highlighted? Should I highlight these as separate lines so that a marker here highlights this part and a marker here highlights this part, and they can be separate colors and they can be the same or different? Basically, here's the question. If you put a marker here to highlight the line, you don't necessarily know when you do that there's going to be a wrap. So, would you rather that the whole line gets highlighted, including part after the wrap, or would you rather that the thing you put that it's possible for you to have multiple line highlights on the line, and the one that's here applies here, and the one that's here applies here? Which one sounds more like a reasonable feature? I mean, I have my opinion, but I'm curious if anyone has a good argument for one side or the other that I haven't thought of. Okay, so the first two suggestions agree with me, so I think that that's enough to confirm that this is a relatively good. So there's a dissenting opinion, which is that this is a visual indication that something happens on this line. That's interesting, and if I put it here on this like token if the parser, for instance, for the error says, oh, there's an error right here, then then it's indicating there's something wrong here. It doesn't care about this, so there's no reason for this to be a part of the highlight, is this counter argument. Yeah, so the other problem with this is, of course, on Windows, when I don't get character position, so the line position is actually right here. This is where the marker actually exists, is on this eye, even though the token where the problem showed up is here. So if there was a problem here, on Windows, you would get this line highlighted, not this one. On other better compilers that give you line and column index, you would get the line, the wrap portion that is actually got an error would get highlighted and nothing else. But on Windows, you'd get weird behavior like that. So it's possible to use the coordinate conversion system. There's an easy solution to this, is to just make two different types, because we can say that there's a line highlight that's a full text line highlight and a visual line highlight. So that, for instance, when you're moving your cursor around, it can use a visual line highlight. When we're placing errors down, we probably want to use the full line, just so that at least on Windows we don't hit a problem. And if we know that we're not getting character positions, we use one. If we're getting character positions, we could use the other or something like this. There's no reason we couldn't just do both. Yeah, the big fox, or the big foe, not sure which, because the X's are decorative possibly, says, yeah, I just get the line number from the Windows compiler, from like the Microsoft compiler. You just get a line number, and so the marker just goes on to the first character of the line, is how this works. And so if the error was actually right here, the way it's set up right now, we would get a highlight here and no highlight here. So in Windows, we really want to highlight the whole thing. But on good compilers like Clang and GCC, on better compilers like Clang and GCC, okay, on compilers with better error messages like Clang and GCC, you get specific character indexes too. Yeah, so I think the right answer is to have support both types, which is going to mean we have more than one line type to deal with, and it's going to mean we have more than two segments, because this is going to get really complicated as soon as I start saying, as soon as I say that you can do the different wraps separately, it's actually going to make my life more complicated, because now, in addition to having a segment of here are things that happen by textual line, I'll need another segment that's here's things that happen by wrap line. So I have some choices. I feel like actually what I'll do, I don't know, because we want to probably use visual lines for the highlight of the cursor. The thing which is like a good feature, even though it's not great for everything, it's good enough, it's a good improvement for everything, the thing that's a good feature everywhere and a required feature in some places is the full text and not the individual wraps. So I think I'm going to implement that first, and I'll leave it as a thing that maybe we come back to if I feel like it's worth it later on to do the individual wraps as separately highlightable. Gotcha. Alright, so that's the plan. Let's figure out how to just keep it the way it is and make it cover the whole line for now. Because that's the easy one that lets most of what we've already written just keep working without throwing us down a deep rabbit hole of more complexity and sorting by wrap positions and stuff that it gets us tangled up in things we don't necessarily want. Yeah, Jim points out you could like parse the error and like look and see if it has enough information to locate where on the line you care about. That's true. It's just there's no standardization of like you'd have to look at all the errors and just get like, an idea of what all the patterns are, because it's like identifier errors are one thing, but that's not the only thing, and there's a bunch of other types of errors you could encounter that have totally different formats. There's no standard grammar that is published for what those line errors look like. Which just, yeah, as the Big Fox points out, it's going to be very error prone for a long time, because you're basically just hoping that they don't change from version to version their basic formats too much, and you're hoping that there aren't too many basic formats that you need to basically cover as you discover them, and so on. So if I'm going to minimize the amount of work I put into this right now, we're going to try to figure out how to highlight the entire thing. So the only problem here basically is right now when we highlight a whole line, we get the Y0 and Y1 from the current character rect. But what we don't know is there going to be another... Okay, I know what we need. Well, I don't know. It's a little tough to say. Okay, I have an argument for what we might want, but it's a little bit interesting. We'll find out. Okay, so we can update the line color using this method, and then what we'll do is we'll say that needs to get cleared whenever we write. So the thing is this, we need to be able to clear that whenever we hit a new line. Do we actually have enough information to know when we've hit a new line? We do, so long as we keep a scan index through the line starts. Okay. So now what we can do is with each step, we're going to compute the next line start index, or first byte index of next line, if the line scan index is less than the line count, plus 1 is less than the line count, then this equals the line starts line scan index plus 1, else equals the max I32. Then, if the index is less than first byte index of next line, sorry, if it's greater than or equal to that, then we take the line scan index and we increment it by 1. Now what we want to do is repeat this until this is false. So that'll look like that. I don't know, but that's a little complicated because what I actually want to do is say if that is less than that, then I'm going to take all of this to here. And then if the index is less than the first byte index of the next line, then we don't do anything. However, if we increment this, then this gets cleared back to 0. Well, we'll just do it this way. We'll mark that this is a new line. we'll increment the line scan index, and then we need to recompute first byte index of next line. There we go. So let's put this right here, first step. Line scanning. This here is token scanning. And then is new line. If we're down here, then if it is a new line, then the visual line marker's color can clear to 0. Then the other thing we wanted to figure out is if it is a new wrap line, then the marker line highlight should equal the visual line marker's color. So how do we find out if it is a new wrap line? That's the other question. And for that, we might want to return here, and there we go, wrap line index. I believe that's what we need. Wrap positions might actually be what we need. Yeah. Line scan index equals, there we go. Let's also get a wrap start equals file state wrap positions, wrap count equals file state wrap position count. Wrap position count, wrap count. Wrap scan index equals, now I need to go back to the types and find out if the full cursor has what I need, wrap line. This field contains the number of the line where the cursor is located, taking the line wrapping into account. This field is 1 based. Okay, perfect. So that's going to be render cursor dot wrap line minus 1, and then first byte index of next wrap equals 0. If wrap scan index plus 1 is less than wrap count, then first byte index of next wrap equals wrap starts wrap scan index plus 1, else first byte index of next wrap equals max I32. Okay, and then we can come down here, and everything we did for line scanning we can do for wraps as well. Is new wrap is false if the wrap scan index is less than the wrap count. Then if the index is less than the first byte of the next wrap, we break. Otherwise we have a new wrap, so we increment the wrap scan index. We set is wrap to true, wrap scan index plus, we update the first byte index of next wrap using the update rule. Perfect. And now is new wrap. Let's set that. Okay. Thank you, chat. Let's give that a try again. So we load the project, build, jump to error, and now I don't see anything. That's annoying. Okay, what went wrong? There's a possibility that the scans are broken, and so we never actually get this set. Yeah, one way or another, marker line highlight is not getting set off of 0. And look, I'm telling you guys, in the old system you couldn't scroll off of the highlight. That's not the way it ever worked. If you don't like it, that's fine, we can fix it, but pretty sure that's the way it's always been. Anyway, line highlight. Okay, let's just step through this because I'm not seeing anything obviously wrong. Load the project, build, jump to error. Forward view.cpp. Okay, so visual line markers currently equal to 0. This is a new line, and then we get the color, we put it in there. Is new wrap is false. Okay, I see the problem. Wrap positions wrap starts don't happen when a new line starts. So I actually want a is new line or wrap equals is new line or is new wrap. And then on here, is new wrap actually wants to be is new line or wrap. Wait, I have a better idea. Why don't I just put that right here? Duh. Darn, still no good. Alright, let's find out why. Obviously, is new wrap is not getting triggered is a part of the problem. Wait, how is wrap count 2? Are you telling me these are the only 2 wraps in the whole system? And what was the original wrap scan index? That can't have been 1, because there were 2 wraps in view. What is this? Wrap line. Okay, if render cursor. Oh. Render cursor. Okay, this is a little confusing. Hold on. Render cursor. I want to see the one that isn't this guy. But why do I keep just seeing him over and over again? Okay, well, let's do this. Go away. You go away. Wait. Then you go away. Now it doesn't wrap. Okay, now whichever one I hit will be one of these two, which is the one I'm trying to fix. So, okay, now it's never hitting it. Okay, I see. So the wrap line is 126, but the wrap position count is 6. $124. I see. So I subtract 124 out from this instead of subtracting the 1, because these are both 1 based. So if I subtract 1 based from 1 based, you get 0 based. And then this would be a 4, which would put it how close to where it needs to be. Okay, so 126 minus 124. Oh, that wouldn't give me a 4, that would give me a 2. Duh. Which would put me right there. Which is the right position because we're not yet at there, so we want to be able to scan through that. Okay, good. Good. Okay, so the wrap positions, that's right, the wrap positions don't include the lines themselves, which means that the wrap line is obviously not actually the right thing. That makes sense. There we go. So now it treats the entirety of that wrap line as one entity and colors them both, which is what we want. Which is what I want for now, I should say. Okay, so we've answered the question about what we do at wrap lines, and I am willing to say that we have finished the line highlight problem. We've also figured out what we're probably going to do with sticky jumps, I think. There might be a little bit more we want to do about clearing out the highlights, you know, on the fly or something. Like we can toggle the highlight on and off while leaving the sticky jumps in place, and we might want to do ranges instead of just points. So there's a little bit more to talk about there still. But hey, all the visible markers are now implemented unless I come back and do separate wrap lines at some point. Let's see. Yeah, we have about an hour left, so let's start looking at some of these things. I'm going to upgrade this to the top of the list because we have Jim in the chat who's got a lot of ideas about it, and because I've discovered a bug with iSearch that we should probably fix before we go adding features, so let's do the iSearch stuff first. So the bug is as follows. Suppose I open up something, before Red CPP is good, anything else, and I type in internal and I scroll away. What you'll see is that the internal is going to be a blank. It's 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 going to and then I start incrementing through. Let me find something with the word internal in it. If I start doing this, I can just move up and down and my view doesn't follow it anymore. And if I scroll away, I can lose it, and incrementing it doesn't snap me back. So that's all trouble. So what I think we want to do first is we want to, whenever we update the highlight, we also want to set the cursor so that it forces the yeah, so it forces the view to move with it. So if we update the highlight, then we want to view set cursor app view seek position start true false, something like that. Right, so that should update the window whenever we increment, or the view scrolling position whenever we increment. Okay, it's not necessarily super awesome that the cursor remains visible through this process. But I can scroll away now, right? I can't. So the ability to scroll away has been lost. Is the cursor getting set? Yeah, it is. It's getting set back to that all the time. So if I try to scroll away, it fails and then snaps back to there. But why is that happening all the time? Update highlight gets called here, and then I guess get user input probably triggers when I run the scroll wheel. So what we really want to do is if we want to only update highlight on certain conditions, basically. It's not clear why we do that at the beginning. Yeah, because what we could be doing is saying set this to this, and do this at the end, and then put it inside of a if not suppress suppress I don't know how you're even managing to scroll away in the first place. For me, it won't let me scroll away at all. And I don't think it ever would have let me scroll away. Like, this is, I'm scrolling down and it won't let me. Okay, so what we want to do is, if we're getting a user input here, if in dot command equals scroll up, or yeah, scroll. Alright, and now what we have to do is go over to the base commands. So flying element, I know that that's a really annoying thing. It's also really annoying to fix. So basically the options are, one, it just pushes everything down, but upon pushing everything down, it's also going to affect all of the coordinate conversions in XY space in a way that is non-trivial to capture, as it turns out. Every time I've tried to, it just ends up being error-prone in other annoying ways. Or you can set it to scroll do a negative amount of scroll, and then it will scroll down and then scroll back, so it like smoothly pushes down, and that way the coordinates actually get preserved because you're doing it through the scroll system, which keeps the coordinates correct. But for whatever reason, I remember that being error prone too. Like that would lead to all kinds of weird things where you could end up clicking into a negative space if you tried, and it is a part of the problem is not knowing the size of the UI in time to do the right things always. Like to find out the size of the UI, you need to know how many query bars and this when you toggle the file bar, for instance, that is a single boolean, so it has a check that says if the boolean's there, do this or that. And finding all the places where that needs to be updated for the query bars has proven several times to just be impossible to get right, so I just gave up. At some point I'll do it for reals. It's just I need to like get into the right frame of mind to face the kind of like fiddly bullshit problems that only happen because features came into existence without a full plan and story about how they would integrate with other features that were also coming into existence still, and they don't play together right, and getting like them to finally settle together is a thing I need to do. It's a frame of mind I'm not ready to get into right now. It'll happen someday. Oh, do you know why I get locked in my version and you don't get locked in yours? It's because scroll wheels are now events that can come in through the get user input. So it used to be that if you did get user input and then they were scrolling, that wouldn't trigger an update highlight because that didn't wake up the coroutine with a scroll wheel event, and that now can happen. That's why it's locking me right now. Okay. Okay, so what we want to do here is go do that. Do that. There we go. So that makes me a mouse wheel scroll. Now what I'm going to do is say no longer have this built in. We're going to do it through the mouse wheel scroll. I'm just going to double check something. I'm pretty sure that this is how it works, but view set scroll. Yeah, okay, so this should probably do the clamping properly. We'll find out. Not sure, actually. But like I said, we'll find out. And then, yeah, mouse click cancels the same way as escape with the iSearch. Okay, so point is, now we're not doing that because that's going to happen in a command. Let me pop over here and actually bind that. So scroll, yeah, mouse wheel, good. Let me come up here to global. Mouse wheel without a modifier does mouse wheel scroll. On to the next global one and do that again. Okay, so hopefully we can now scroll through a command instead of having it built into the core. And hopefully when we call it from the iSearch it will do the right thing. And hopefully I can remember to implement suppress highlight update. There, just remembered. And go. Okay, so step one, check that normal scrolling still works. It does. I can't scroll up beyond the top, I can't scroll down below the bottom, so the clamping is automatic. I don't have to do that. It just works. That's good. Next, let me pull up something I can search through. Internal, and I can scroll down arbitrarily far, and then I hit down, and there we go, it jumps me where I want to be. I scroll up, 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 down, 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 down. And I go, if I hit escape, I go back where I was. If I hit internal again, and I go, wait a minute. Okay, what about right here? Then it jumps me to there, which is not what Jim wants it to do. So here we are. If we press new line or tab, if Control is held, it pastes the previous iSearch query into there. Otherwise, it saves the iSearch query and it breaks. So it breaks out of this loop, and that right there is why it jumps back. There you go. The only thing this doesn't do now is highlight all of the occurrences of internal while we're using it. And so that is a really interesting and annoying thing, because do I actually want to implement that right now? Not so sure I do. So what we're going to do is say that is basically the same thing it's always been, but it's a little bit cleaned up. If we want to get around to upgrading to do the full parse, then we'll do that later, but the other things, it works reasonably in a way that clones the way it has worked, with the ability to now press enter and keep your scroll position. I've also now moved the scroll wheel into the command map and out of the core entirely, which I appreciate. The more things that are in the custom layer, the better. Okay. Now, how can we make it so that the line at the cursor is always highlighted? That's the next question. How would we even write that? Because the problem is I have to set a marker somewhere on the line. Basically, wherever the cursor is, I want to put a marker there. Whenever the cursor moves, I want to move that marker to the cursor. But there are so many different things that can move the cursor. The cursor can be moved by the core and by the custom layer. So it's not really a matter of having everywhere the custom layer moves the cursor have it update its marker as well. That would also be a thing that's like, if we think of the line highlight as one module, and then all the other things that can move the cursor as a separate module, we don't want to have the fact that we have a line highlight be a module that all other modules are aware of. We want these to be separate modules that work by communicating to the core. So basically what we want is anytime the cursor moves, but I don't want to have 10 cursor updates in a frame, move the marker 10 times, and then finally render with it once when we actually care about where it is at the end. What we really want is move it however many times you want. We're about to render, give me a chance to update my things near the cursor stuff. Basically, we have some things that might want to be based on where the cursor is when we go to render. And so what we want is a callback that's like, this view's about to get rendered with this buffer. If you wanted to do something now's the time. So here's an interesting thought. I guess it's a hook that we need. We need a hook that gets called right before we render a buffer and view combination and say, hey, here's your parameters. You have this buffer and this view. We're about to render that buffer into this view. Do anything you want to it first. And then that anything you want can be something like put a new line highlight in at a certain place, and then maybe you want another callback that's like, we just finished rendering, do anything you want, and that can then be like, delete the line highlight. Maybe. Maybe. Another option is we make a callback that's like, hey, we're about to render this view into this buffer, do whatever you want, and here's a callback for you to call to us that will tell us to actually do our end of the deal. And then you can have one hook that does the kind of thing like the command caller does, where you do some work to prepare for the render. You do the render by calling the thing they passed to you and giving the view and buffer back to them, and then you finally clean up whatever you started, and now you don't have to have two hooks that communicate via global variable. You have one hook that can have local stuff. And furthermore, if you want to do something fancy like, hey, they said render this view into this buffer in this view, but I'm going to ignore that that's what they're actually trying to do and not call that, then you would be able to for some reason. I don't know why you would do that. You could say like, build a completely different buffer and render that buffer that is like a miniaturization of the thing that they're supposed, like, it's, I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities. The problem, Jim, is that the cursor square is getting rendered in the core, and I want to make this customizable. Part of the key of this is I'm trying to get more usage code of things that actually use the highlights in interesting ways. And something users might want to do is say, have cursors behave in different ways, like, or rather have things augment the cursor, like a line highlight, like a token highlight. They might want to be able to scroll, like toggle through different types of token highlights and be like, show me, like, if I have 3 different types of tokens and I can do a delete of, like, I can delete by Lexer token, alphanumeric, and white space delimited, and I want to be able to toggle through and see, like, show me the white space delimited token, that's the one that'll work, delete by that kind of thing. Or maybe have all 3 of them simultaneously with different colors or something, right? I want them to be able to do that from the custom side, so I'm forcing myself to do it on the custom side, which is not how the cursor works right now, which is what creates this problem. Of course, if the cursor were going to be on the custom side, I would still have to solve this problem, which is, how do we do something that it affects rendering only, that wants to know where the cursor is and wants to put in like extra info on the screen based on where the cursor is at render time. That's basically what's happening. And it might not just be based on where the cursor is, because if I pass in the view and the buffer, it could be based on where the marker is, or where the mark is as well. It could be based on everything. That is, everything that you can derive from that buffer and that view as like the special keys to this thing. Like, here's your keys, this buffer and this view. Whatever information you want to add to the context of the render before we actually do the render, go ahead and do it, is the idea. And so I think that's what I have to do. Then the only question is, do I want a before render and then an after render, or do I want a like a whole render thing? The problem is, like with the command caller, instead of having before command command after command. I just have command caller, and command caller does some work, calls the command, and then does some more work. But if I do the same thing here, which is like render caller, I could do some work, render, and then finish, except that render isn't callable from the custom side right now. So I can't just make an API that's like call the renderer, because that's only valid inside this hook. Since it's only valid inside this hook, the correct thing to do would be to pass in a function pointer that is callable that will trigger the render. But that seems like a whole lot of nonsense to build just to make this work. So I'm leaning towards a before render after and an after render hook. But the thing is it's very likely that what you're going to be doing is making a temporary like set of markers that you want to create before the render and clear after the render. And so now you're going to have to pass shit through the global space, even though it's like kind of a dumb reason to have to put something into global. So I'm torn. Do I do the lots of work to make a lots of crazy work to make a nice, easy to use render caller, or do I make the users do a little bit more work so that, I mean, I don't know, when I put it that way, it's pretty clear that I'm going to do a render caller, I think. The core will call the render caller with a view and a buffer, and the render caller has the option to do anything it wants to do before it calls the render itself. The only problem is that means that there's only one module who can ever touch the before and after hooks. Like all the other hook things, if two modules both want to do stuff before and after render, what happens then? And it's not just as simple as make a specialized type of marker who's got an update rule that always puts it on the cursor, because that won't actually work for these token type things. Hey Dave, welcome to the stream. So given that if you do a command caller, then you can do a chain of command callers and have render callers, and each render caller, when it calls its callback, is just calling into the next thing in the chain. If you do a before render and an after render, then you just have a chain of befores and then a reverse chain of afters, or something like that. I could make user-controlled scopes. That's what would do it. Then the cleanup is free. So we're about to begin a render. You create a scope and you just say clear. Oh. Okay. At the beginning of each render, before the render, you clear the scope from last time and then go again. Let me think. This is definitely the kind of thing where what I'd like to do is just write exactly the code that expresses how I think this should work. So let me go into default framework. For now, we'll call this something that happens at that layer. Actually, this should be hooks. So to express exactly what I want here, we are going to assume I have a view summary and a buffer summary passed to me, and then, or actually, let me come up here to file hook. So I have a buffer ID and a view ID passed to me. That should always be true. Alloc buffer markers on buffer. So set this to a line highlight. What color should it be? Don't know yet. And no text color because we don't have that feature right now, and no view key because we're gonna destroy it before that ever matters. Anyway. Free managed object free app line highlights, and then buffer markers managed object store data markers. Oops, that should be marker. Nah, doesn't matter. So what's the marker? The marker's position is view.cursor position, and then I'm going to store that into the line highlight from index 0 store one thing. There it is. Okay. So we're storing that into there. Now we need to figure out the line color. Yeah, I feel like this is a very nice way to do this. This is going to make the job of the implementer very easy, and it's going to give us a way to actually, let's do that. Line color. How do we want to get the line color? What should the... I guess that should just be a new thing in the style, shouldn't it? Alright, so that'll give me the highlight cursor line. I still have to actually set that from something. I guess for now I'll default to pulling that from the white space highlight color, and then we'll go and do a better job than that later. So let's go through all the themes real quick and add that. So let's see, there's twilight, sunlight, strange, sunlight, twilight. Okay. Sunlight, strange, twilight, STB. STB dark. Midnight. Hajorchij, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Handmade hero. Not sure why this one is out of order. And then, of course, 4coder. I guess this one's out of order too. And doesn't use capital letters everywhere? Who knows? Alright, so there we go. I now have highlight cursor line spammed out everywhere. And if we go back to the default hooks, the only thing left to do is actually make this hook a real thing that gets called, and make this callback a real thing that calls the call that needs to get called inside there. Okay. If you don't set it, it defaults to 0, which means it has an alpha of 0 and will be invisible. So like each thing that isn't set gets a value of 0, I believe. Later, Dave. Thanks for hanging out. Alright, so next thing we want to do is we want to check out scroll rule sig. Because there we are going to implement render rule sig. Actually, that should be render color sig. Get the application links and the view ID, and it needs a render callback do core render. There we go. Cool, cool. So now what we want to do is we want to call this callback. Well, we want to register these callbacks first and foremost. So let's pull this up to here. Set render caller context default render caller default render caller, and then command caller. Okay, so now I need to define that. Render caller function func special hook render caller back to types special hook render caller Okay. Okay, so now what we want to do is go over here to models. Look at all these hooks. Where's the command caller hook? Here it is. I want a render caller function. Render caller. And then what I want is I want in the 4head CPP where we say command caller I also want a render caller command caller. I also want a render caller, and I want this to be a render caller function. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Finally, when I'm in the view and I'm about to render loaded file in view, that's very good. That's actually called from right here. Okay, so what does that result even mean? Okay, so it means dick all. Gotcha. So this also means dick all. And now the trick is all that shit that you see right there needs to happen inside of the do core render call, and instead we want to call the render caller. So I have the models. If we don't have a render caller, we'll just do that, okay? Fair enough. But if we have render caller, we are then going to call the render caller. App links. And then we want the view ID. We get that by taking the view that we've got right here, going to its persistent block, taking the ID and adding 1, because the IDs that are internal are 0-based, and the IDs that are external are 1-based. And then I need the do core render function. Man, okay. Do core render. Internal void do core render application links. There we go. Now I somehow have to get that to call this. That's the game plan. I'm gonna need a 5-minute break. I'm out of water. You can assume other things that have happened biologically because of the fact that I'm out of water. I'm gonna take care of both of these situations, and I'll be back 5 minutes or so. Alright. The roughly approximately 5-minute break is up. Let's get back to this. How are we going to implement do core render in such a way that it can make that call right there? Well, here are some ideas. If I go to API implementation, I can see how I get command out of that, and I can see how I get system out of that. And I can see how I can get models out of that. Now, where did the rect come from? The is active, the target, render target. We're going to have to take a look. So let's look at models. Does this have the render target? No. So let's look at 4ed CPP real quick. Where is this render target coming from? It must be coming from the, yes, from in there. And we have a target. Okay, so here's the plan. Command data is just going to get all this extra stuff stuffed into it. So we're going to have render context, render target, in here we want to know the command render view, command render rect, let's see. So we need the view, which we're going to get from the render view. We're going to need the rect, which we get from the render rect. We're going to need the is active, which we're going to get from the render is active. And we're going to need the render target, which we're going to get from the target. Okay, so we're missing the render is active. Turns out we don't need to stuff that in there. We have another option. Wait, no. Let's stuff that in there. It's easier. It's easier. Panel view mismatching. I just don't want to deal with it. Okay, there we go. So we get the command data back from the app links, and then we can find all the things that are currently going on and call the render loaded file in view. This of course means that we've sacrificed thread safety, because what we're doing is we're using a hidden global variable to pass information around. It's hidden because it doesn't look global, but it is anyway. If we wanted to render from multiple threads, which we wouldn't really want to do anyway, but if we ever wanted to do something like that, we would then have to create multiple command datas and app links, structs, and things. Yeah. Okay. So, there it is. I am now seeing a line highlight. Although the line highlight doesn't show up on line 1, which is interesting. That's probably a bug with our render, and it doesn't show up on the last line either. Alright, so we need to debug that, but we have a line highlight, so I mean everything works except for the stuff we did earlier today to make the line highlight stuff, I think. Yeah. So yep, we just have line highlighting now, pretty much. Let's go and fix this one bug here. So, messages, boom, boom. Why you play me this way? Also, why do I have two 4coders? What is this one? Is this like from a different stream? Here's one we've been using today. Slightly smaller text. Here's the debug one. Okay, I guess I had just an old 4coder sitting around. Alright, now the time has come. Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum-bum. To figure out why we don't get line highlights like this. So, there we go. There we go. Let's just step through one of these things from the... I want to see from the point where we first start sorting everything out. So, count 1. We have one line highlight. So, line scan index starts at 0. 24, okay. 1075 is the next wrap, okay. And while we're at it, markers, yeah, his position's been moved to 0, so right, if it's the first step we want to set is new line to true anyway. Okay, got it. Okay, so that'll get our first line working. Now we still have to think about the last line and why it's not working. I'll use that breakpoint again in a second, but I want to see this first. Yep, so that works. It was just a bug with our line highlighting rendering. Now that. Why does that not work? So again, we have one. Oh, we don't have one. Okay, so the problem actually has happened before we even got to there. So let's see that. No marker count. Huh? Okay, let me try this. Where is the call to getting all the markers? Get visual markers. Let's go, whoops, let's go in there. So our range goes from there to 1075. And I'll bet that our range is excluding it is the problem. Yeah. So what we want to do is make the end, we want to make our range right. 494, no, not 494, get visual markers. It doesn't really kill us to include more, so what we're going to do is make, yeah, 515, that's the place to do it. We're just going to make this an inclusive on both ends range, because even though we don't necessarily always need it, we could sometimes use it, and it won't kill us to have things we aren't actually going to use at the end of the segments of the render markers. If there are a few render markers that get included for some reason because they're past the end but not actually going to show up, it won't kill us because we don't even, it just doesn't even clock. You know, it's like a couple extra things to sort, and then never actually gets scanned. The scan index never actually reaches it. It doesn't show up. No bug. So that will make sure we always include, and in the case where this is the last value, like the largest possible value, that like the size of the whole buffer, and this is at the end of the buffer, then this will connect. For similar reasons, I'll make this range inclusive as well. There we go. Okay, now we just have line highlighting fully working. Any color scheme. I want to see how this looks on my favorite color schemes. Midnight, that's pretty dope. That's actually really dopey. You know, that's some pretty dopey line highlighting right there. I'd say that's grade A baller. And let's see, STB dark, that's nice. Let's see, Handmade Hero. Okay, that's a little bit much. I'll leave it up to Casey to pick his color, and then I'll integrate it back in though. Color. For this color scheme, I think it's using the same as the Handmade Hero one. I think that that's actually pretty good for this color scheme. Okay, that's definitely bad, so let's fix that one. Hajorchuj needs a different color for its highlights. So the problem is, I think mostly that it's too dark. I want to just brighten it up a bunch, so let's try 6s where there are 3s. And then I'm going to save this, and I'm going to use my reload themes. Okay. That's a little better. Let's try it again. What the hell is that? It's like affecting... Do you see that? The search bar is somehow affecting the position of stuff. It's like F, and then if I do replace F with that every time, and the next one comes up and it gets even further. F with, place F with, yeah. Alright, we gotta figure out what that shit's about, because that's dumb. But anyway, reload themes. Not sure why I don't see file reload in here anywhere. Must not be docked or something, I don't know. Place 7 with 8. Reload themes. And pull up some code though. Let's give it a little bit more R and a little bit more R and a helpful dose of G as well, and see how that looks. Reload themes. There we go. I think that's appropriate for this theme. I could still stand to just bump everything up one more step. So B9. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so let me put that back into the Hajurchuj theme in the main branch, in the actual code. There we go. Alright, color tweaker. Let's see, we've done 4coder, Handmade Hero, Hajurchuj, Midnight looked good, STB dark, STB looks good. Strange. Yeah, who cares? I don't think this one actually gets used. But it looks good anyway. Sunlight. I like it. Twilight. Perfect. You can probably just say Dear C. I'm not sure what you're talking about at all. Oh, that's how to pronounce his name, Dear C, huh? You sure that's close? Dear C. Oh, that's the translation. I see. Well. Okay then. Alright, so all the color schemes besides Handmade Hero basically look alright. I'm going to let Casey decide what color he's going to use, and then I'll make the Handmade Hero one match that. So what's next? I made a note of something to do next, but now I'm forgetting what it is. Not sure. But I think that this is a pretty good place to stop. This is another good thing to do, highlight token at cursor all the time. I might get that one done before I go first, because that'll be kind of a fun one. And then these start getting more intricate and, well, this gets more intricate. These are just like, I don't know, outstanding questions of what to even do with this feature now that we have it. So yeah, we'll call that one done. Let's try to do this highlight the token thing, and then we will call it a day. So in particular, what I want to highlight, the thing that would be useful for my purposes is if we were highlighting the thing that the sniper would take. So base commands snipe. Okay, show me where is snipe. No. There we go. Which file is this? Seek. This reminds me, while I'm here, I wanted to go back to the bindings for a little bit. There's one in particular that's been hurting me. I want to get back to the binding that takes Alt B to toggle file bar. I do that one more frequently than I realized, and having it off the hot path has kind of hurt for the last week, so. Okay, so boundary token or white space. Current view snipe delete. Well, that's busted. Oh, it matched the first character and then didn't match. Okay, I have to look into why that's happening. If it's like the length is exactly right and there's a C right there or something, I'm not sure. Or if the length is short enough. Yeah, that's weird. Let me take a look at that. I have no idea what this is about. I'm ignoring it for now. This is, I don't even know. I might rewrite the iSearch in the next build or for this build or something. Like either for 029 or 030 or something. I'm gonna rewrite iSearch so that we can give Jim more of the features he wants, and so that I don't have to read this nonsense, whatever this is again. This is old school Alan not knowing how to do things back in the day who wrote this, apparently. Alright. Point is, I want to look at current view snipe delete. View buffer snipe range. Alright, Jim, thanks for hanging out. See you around. You haven't missed much, or you won't miss much. I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon here, I think. Yeah, I just found what I needed, the buffer boundary seek stuff. Bye. Alright, we just need to allocate the buffer markers onto this buffer. We're going to need 2 buffer markers this time. We're going to set this visuals of this to buffer markers type character highlight ranges token color 0, 0. Marker slash range markers. Range markers needs to have 2 spots. Range markers 0 dot position. Range markers 1 dot position. Range markers 0 dot position needs to equal pos 1, and 1 dot position needs to equal pos 2. And then while I'm here, by the way, I need to get this to work. Token flags. Okay. Managed object, store data, app, token highlight, range markers, start at index 0. There are 2 of them. Put that data in there. That gives me that. Now I just need the token color. We'll get colors up here. So there's line color. And then we'll do one right here for token color. Okay, now which color is good for a token color? We did white space. We copied the white space highlight for the highlight cursor line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the cursor color, and then I'm going to do get theme colors, app color 1, and then we're going to do this is going to be that bitword with that. Right, okay, that's that bug again. But what's going on there is I probably need to use a pointer to the buffer. Interesting, very interesting. So, I don't know if I'll keep this built in or not, but it definitely has potential to be a really useful type of feature once I figure out what to do with it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put all into the config file so you can turn this off with the config file, I think. I think that'll be the move. Okay, so for now, let me just try a couple of things. That, and then I want to decrease this maybe to there. Not sure what just went wrong. I mean, what happened to the thing where we said do token highlight? That's just not happening. Whoops. I think the idea is we are always going to do it now. So let's just try that. one other option is that I always do the token highlight, but I don't extend the range to show the full snipe range. That might make it less distracting, but still have the same usefulness of always showing the thing that will get sniped. Yeah, look at that. Now I can see that I'm going to snipe all the way to there, even when I'm not sitting right here. Cool. That's perfect. Alright, I think that's enough for today. There's a lot of ideas on my head right now of what I could do with this next, but I don't really want to start pursuing those ideas right now. I'm a little bit, at the end of like 3.5 hours. I'd like to take it easy. I've already done a lot of work yesterday, so I don't want to push us too much farther. So that's it for today. Thanks to everyone who came to hang out in the chat and give feedback and vote on certain questions and things. There'll be more to come. See you later. Bye bye.